We're going to get going. It is 1 o'clock. So I think this presentation will only go about 15, 20 minutes is the expectation. So you can have 10 minutes of gossiping time between the private and public meetings. So we'll hold us to that. I do know we have one more member who is upstairs. Will be down in just a moment, but I will call us to order. We will begin with a roll call, and then I'll entertain a motion to go in camera. Mr. Westerson,
Perfect.
Roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Dodick.
Are you here?
In body, yes.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Councillor Carlson, pardon me.
Also present.
And Councillor Croson.
I'm here as well.
We have Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, as you can see with us. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So the first agenda item is an in-camera agenda item from People and Culture Business Partner on the performance evaluation. So the first thing I need is a motion to go in camera. So made by Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope. All in favor? Excellent. So we will be going under Section 24, advice from officials related to performance evaluation. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with us. I know we're a little late. Councillor Carlson did just run upstairs, so as soon as he returns, we will get started. We don't need him, but we are a polite committee. Some of us are a polite committee. And the first thing I'm going to suggest actually is that we move the submissions around. We do have members of the Animal Welfare Committee here, and so I'm going to suggest we move that to 6.1. So I'm just giving you a heads up that I'm going to recommend an amendment to the agenda as soon as we see our other colleague. That's 6.4. Yes. And that motion is from you, Deputy Mayor, so just so you're not surprised that I'll be making the suggestion. I'm not crazy. All right, now that Councillor Carlson is sitting in his chair, ready for the committee to proceed, we will actually get going, and we'll start with a roll call, please, Mr. Westerson.
Councillor Middleton, or Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope, pardon me.
They're both here.
Councillor Dodick.
Present.
Councillor Carlson.
Still here.
Councillor Croson.
Present.
Perfect. We have quorum. Thank you.
All right, beginning with the acknowledgement statement, the City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We move on now to the adoption of the agenda. As I was saying while you were gone, Councillor Carlson, I'm going to recommend 6.4 become 6.1 as we have some members of that committee there. So we have a motion then, be it resolved that the amended agenda of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting of June 22nd, 2023 be adopted as presented. And I have that moved by Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Anything in regards to movement of any other items on the agenda? Any issues with the agenda? Seeing none, Madam Chair, we'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. We have the agenda unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda, I have a motion by Councillor Dodick. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting held on May 31st, 2023 be approved and the Chair and City Clerk designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the status of initiatives for June 22nd, 2023 be received as information. Councillor Dodick.
I'm curious, since I was absent at that meeting, is it appropriate for me to sponsor a resolution adopting minutes where I didn't attend?
Okay, we'll make Councillor Carlson the mover then. All right, Councillor Carlson. Question has been called.
Thank you. I trust everyone looked through everything. Any questions? No? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. We have our consent agenda also passed, and then we move on to 6.1, which is the old 6.4, which is a submission, as are all of our things on our agenda today. Submission from Tammy Belanger, Chair, and Shelby Gibson, Vice Chair of Animal Welfare Committee, RE Animal Welfare Committee Terms of Reference Update. Now, the motion here is under Councillor Carlson. And so it was brought forward by the committee that they would like to have a couple of changes. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council approve amendments to the Animal Welfare Committee's terms of reference as follows. 1, delete the words ad hoc from the title and replace with standing. 2, Section 1, name and type of committee. B, deleting ad hoc and replace with standing. 3, Section 5, duties and responsibilities. A, deleting pilot project designed to determine best practices for the eventual elimination of feral cat colonies and replacing with funding and application process of feral cat colonies within the City of Lethbridge in accordance with the care and maintenance guidelines of feral cat colonies. B, deleting alliance and replace with animal association, and deleting Section 5.d in its entirety and replacing with to advocate, educate, and advise the community at large on the best practices of responsible pet ownership in collaboration with the City of Lethbridge, Community Animal Services, and other local pet organizations within the city. 4, Section 6 quorum, deleting 5 and replacing with 50% plus 1 and adding vice chair after chair. 5, Section 7 meetings, adding the Animal Welfare Committee and the number 3 after the word 3. 6, Section 9 reporting, review, and evaluation dates and process for the committee, adding the Animal Welfare Committee, deleting monthly reports and replacing with an annual report, and deleting the remainder of the paragraph and replacing with the Animal Welfare Committee will continue until the committee, in consultation with City Council, wishes to disband or until funding no longer exists. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Chair Croson. I appreciate the work that was done by the committee in bringing these changes forward. I'm wondering if there's any questions from my colleagues about the changes.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
I have, just in terms of the language that's used, and I just would like some clarification in regards to the term standing committee versus a standing policy committee. Is it confusing? Do we understand clearly what the intent of this language is? I'm not sure that I do.
To whom are you addressing that question?
Well, that would be to the mover, but he can deflect that any time.
Ms. Hilford?
Come on, Mr. Wester.
I'll ask Ms. Hilford to... There's nobody up in the city
Oh,
clerk's
look at all
department.
those clerks.
I'm sure the parliamentarian here would like to answer that as well, but standing just means like continues on regularly, so.
They simply have
committee-
standing as a committee, as
No.
opposed to a standing policy committee?
Standing just means it's a regular occurrence of the committee, so.
We're satisfied that there is no ambiguity there?
I am, but if committee's not, we're open to suggestions.
If I can, we have several standing committees right now. Maybe the
Correct, you
parliamentarian
do.
was going to go in. So it's, I mean, aside from our SPCs that are council, we have outside, arm's length, whatever you want to call them, standing committees.
Standing, because they're regular meeting.
Those would be like RLAC, I'm guessing, perhaps now this one, YAC, Youth Advisory.
Correct. As opposed to ad hoc, which this was
When it was,
termed.
yeah, when it was created, it was a understanding that it was new. It was a 4-year budget exploration, I believe, by Councillor Miyashiro and Mayor Spearman, if I recall, that they thought this was important. So it was basically tried for 4 years. I think council saw the value in it and has continued on for the last.
Indefinitely, that's right.
That helps at all.
I think standing as opposed to ad hoc, like that's just, and that's a terminology. A standing policy committee is just a name we gave ourselves. So,
Yep, just want to make sure that there's no ambiguity there.
okay, any other questions?
Sarsfield, you're abundantly satisfied that it does not provide ambiguity?
I'm generally satisfied, and really it just comes down to difference between ad hoc versus standing. So when a committee is created with a specific purpose and a specific end date to create some structure or some function, which the animal welfare was originally, then it's an ad hoc because it's not going to exist forever. We've got like about 12 to 15 standing committees, not including the standing policy committees, which just consist of council members. Standing committees consist of typically members at large with occasionally some members of council on it.
Good, thank you.
All right, our visitor, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. I just noticed in reading through the policy, under statement and purpose, ad hoc is not included on this list of to be deleted. Do we want to be leaving ad hoc under statement of purpose? Or do we want to be removing that too, since we're removing it from everywhere else? So it's under statement of purpose. It's on page 36 of the agenda package.
That must, I think that's just an oversight, I would imagine.
Okay, so then if that is, could we have that added to the motion? Yeah.
Friendly? Councillor Dodick.
Yeah. I have two questions. One doesn't relate to any changes. I just want to understand, number 3, composition and appointments. Is voting members, is there 8? Is the number 8?
How many voting members are currently there? How many voting members are on your committee, just by show of numbers?
Okay, the reason I ask is that it says 5 community members, then 1 representative from Lethbridge and District Humane Society, and then it says 1 representative from each legally recognized animal rescue, and then it gives 2 of them. So I'm wondering if, I just curious.
It's 8.
It is 8, okay. And the reason I asked that was because I wanted a little bit of clarification of the change in item 6, quorum, where it says a minimum of 50% plus 1. So what is the 50% modifying?
I can. I think because I had the same question on a past committee I was on, and because we didn't have a full committee status, like 3 of the groups were supposed to be appointed by local agencies, they hadn't, and so we were only operating with 5 at the time. So in my mind, it was 50% of the 5 that were actual standing committee members, plus 1, so it was 4.
I would
that
probably, I would think that would be the accurate. So even that 8 is the total that can be on that committee, but if we only appoint 5, then their quorum now would be 3, based on the 50 plus 1.
And to make it clear, it should be 50% of the voting members plus 1,
That can be a friendly amendment in there.
because I don't know what that's modifying. Because let's say you have one person, okay, 50% of one person plus 1 equals 2. If you round
Now
up.
we're getting good at math.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I've been sitting here listening to this, and I'm actually going to bring forward a motion arising to replace the motion that's on the board. So before we go much more into details, I actually have a motion arising, and it just came to me off the top of my head. No, just kidding. It's already written, and Mr. Westerson has it to put up.
Question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Crowe. Nope.
Okay, thank you. Through you to, I guess our only employee, city manager, or designate, I'm sure it's going to be. We're also looking at our honorarium schedule, and I know that we did a rough budget to a year and a half ago-ish, based on the numbers we had. Is this going to impact that budget? Or because it was, the previous, it was an ad hoc or standing advisory, so this would have been taken into consideration. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Oh, it's popping up right now. So this is my motion arising, because this is not the only one we've seen. We've seen RLAC and Historic Places Advisory and others coming before us. And we're not looking at any of these holistically. We're looking at each one. But at no point have we actually sat down and said, which of these do we still need? Are they all, like, are there certain changes that need to be made in all? Which ones need bylaws, which ones don't? And we actually have, again, in the policy that we will, or in the, bylaw that we will review these, and we haven't done it for a while. So this would be, instead of taking each of these independently, to ask the city clerk's department, through the city manager, to conduct a review of the current boards, commissions, and committees of the city of Lethbridge, including but not limited to a review of mandates, determine if there are any that are complete or outdated, with potential dissolution of, or adjustments to mandates, membership, and reporting to council. Recommendations on merging any BCCs that have similar mandates to encourage efficiency. Identify if there are any BCCs that would drive operational efficiency and serve the needs of the community better by making them an administrative committee or operated by administration rather than a council BCC. Are there currently any gaps where a priority of the present city council and community would be enhanced with the BCC? And through this, with engagement of stakeholders, make sure it's aligned with our council strategic plan and look at best practices. And then to have this back in approximately a year to be ready for the October 2024 recruitment period. Because, like I said, I don't know if anybody else has been seeing it, but we've been doing this almost every time we have a governance. There's someone before us, and it's all seeming to be similar concerns, similar questions from this governance committee without an overview of it. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I love the idea, but is that to preempt the motion, the work that's been done and that we've read and?
Go either way. This could be an additional motion, and we could pass what this group is asking for, and then that would, this group would still be part of the overall review as every other one was. Or we could say, rather than doing this, they could maintain under the terms of reference they have now until the review. Either one is open, and I have no, I don't have any idea for either one.
And I think
My preference is the option where we approve the changes with that one, and then this is a subsequent motion rising, so 2 separate motions effectively.
We will then revert back to continuing on discussion of the first motion, and keep in mind this motion will be coming immediately after it. So Councillor Carlson, you had accepted a friendly on adding the 50 plus 1 and making the changes there. Are there any other suggested changes or any other concerns with the changes to these terms of reference? I have nobody in the queue, so I'm going to assume not. So then we return to Councillor Carlson for debate on this motion.
Thank you. I appreciate the work, as I said, the work that had been done and the clarity that was given on the name change and some of the changes we're in. We've captured a couple things we'll switch. And I'd ask for my colleagues' support in recommending this to council.
And you also want to add to your motion a thank you of animal welfare?
Sure. Or I can just do it verbally.
Come out today.
Exactly.
And they get to listen to
I
our,
was excited. There were people here. We were all alone.
if we had kept them later in the agenda, they'd have to sit through the whole meeting, so we'd look like people were interested in our whole meeting.
If there's anything further, Madam Chair, I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called, all in favor? And those changes pass unanimously. So thank you guys for coming out. All your work was done in advance, and obviously that was accepted by this committee. And we'll move forward as suggestions to council. So we return then to the motion arising. All the whereases are there as well. And again, it's based on the fact that if they're tied to our governance structure, and we've been looking at the governance structure, we should be looking at relevance of BCCs overall. And the recommendation is to actually do a review. And that is the motion I would like to bring forward. And so questions on that motion? Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
The question to the mover, are we not already doing this as a comprehensive review of boards, committees, and commissions?
No, we are doing a review of our own standing policy committees and if they work for us. That is completely separate from boards, commissions, and committees. We have never asked for a review of BCCs under this term. So only thing we're looking at is whether we have the right standing policy committees. If we're meeting too often, that's our own governance structure. That is not in any way asked for a review of this. And I can confirm that was Ms. Hilford if she has a different understanding.
There is. We're also looking at terms. We're looking at per diems and stipends for members that you don't see as included in any of this discussion?
No, again, the transition or the concern about terms is about whether council, how long council would be on certain ones. So it may be affected because we might in the end decide those don't exist, but that wouldn't change the overall policy of whether or not we have term limitations. It would just go, there was a term limitation, but that committee doesn't exist anymore. But it does not affect the term limitations of volunteers on the boards, and it doesn't affect which BCCs exist. And again, that's my understanding, but I will confirm that with administration.
City manager, and I do agree with that. Thank you.
This is not in any way a duplicate of anything that's already being done. Any other questions about this? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And unfortunately, I just haven't read it completely. Because my question is on what is the process that's going to be utilized?
The process is, so it's a review of the mandates, the membership, et cetera. And essentially, we would pass this on to administration, and I'm assuming that it would go to the city clerk's department, and using the review recommendations we've outlined, they would bring a report back to this committee within about a year.
Okay, and at that time, we could have a good discussion. I know that some of my colleagues have expressed thoughts about possible other committees. It is not my thoughts, but I know that there has been some discussion about other committees that could be joined or created. And so at that time, when it comes back,
Gap
that
analysis
would be
is part of this,
Excellent.
right? Because if there is something that this council wants to have done as one of our priorities, and we think it'd be better done with a committee, that would be part of the discussion as well.
Thank you. I've now read it right there. Thank you.
And I apologize. It just seemed to be more of a motion arising than a motion, so that's why it came now. And I didn't mean to surprise anybody with it. But surprise. Any other questions on it? I don't see anyone now. Oh, Director of Community Services, which would be Ms. Hilford.
Different hat today. Thank you. I was just going to add to Councillor Carlson's request that we envision part of the process being engagement with all of council as well, prior to coming back with a report. And maybe doing a health check along the way if we need to, or requesting funding if we need to from the governance SPC.
Do we feel comfortable going into debate, or are there more concerns, questions?
I guess just my question, it's not all owners doing this work? It's not good. We've given it a year.
We would like to do a thorough review, so it will be onerous, we understand that, but we've given ourselves a year. If we do require additional resource or funding, we would come back to governance and request that or let you know about that, but we believe
We have
it's...
no budget.
And to give myself absolutely no credit, this idea came from the city clerk's department.
And the fact that you have now completed the census, I mean, that'll create a whole lot of capacity for you.
Thank you for that.
But yes, this, again, there is a policy that we are supposed to review these. Doesn't say how often, but we are supposed to review these. And it hasn't been done for a while. And again, I'm hearing the same arguments. Should this be administrative? Should it not? Where should it be? Should it stay, you know? This was not done in the last term of council. A review was not done on these that I recall.
I have a question.
Oh, Councillor Carlson has a question.
And it's all right, Keith, having to walk over to the only hard copy of the motion that's available. My question is, this is recommend to council. It goes back to my earlier questions last meeting around authority of the committee.
Haven't changed yet.
But I get, do committees have zero authority to do anything?
I think we can direct this to administration without going through council, can we not? I'm not recommending that. He's just asking a procedure question.
Yeah, I'm just asking the question. We can always take it to our colleagues, but it's just one of those things that,
I wouldn't recommend doing this without the support of the rest of council.
oh, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, if it's unanimous here.
I
Anyways,
would not recommend doing this without the support of the rest of council.
just my thought is what is the can't? Is that your free legal advice?
There are some things can be referred back to administration without going to council, but this is not being referred back. This would be an initial referral, and I would recommend it go to council. If we choose to move it along. That decision has not been made yet at all. Any other questions or debate on this? All right. I will hold the close if there's any debate. If not, I'll give you some of my whereases. All right, I'll call the question. Question's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. I'll just shut up now. And we'll move on to 6.2. Oh, sorry, 6.1, which became 6.2. So honorariums for boards, committees, and commissions, which has been passed by council, but we then asked administration to create a council policy. And Mr. Sarsfield has created that and brought it forward as a submission. So it is based on the decisions we have made as to how much money is given for different meetings, who gets money, et cetera. And the new council policy, recommended council policy, is there. Are there any questions that you have of Mr. Sarsfield related to the draft city council policy? And you had that one in advance, so hopefully it has been read. I see nobody in the queue. Everybody happy with it? Want to move right to debate or any questions? Councillor Carlson.
I'm happy with it. I just found out that I've been spelling honoraria and honorariums incorrectly all my life. Or are there two spellings that are acceptable? Okay, because I do the U. Hey, thank you.
Do you want?
Depends if you like British or United States.
Okay, I like British, so can we change that?
British is with the U.
Are you asking just for a spelling change for your? All right. Counselor Carlson, you can make whatever changes you want since you are the mover of this one. Yes. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council adopt the City Council policy for honorariums for boards, committees, and commissions as provided in the attachment, retroactively effective to January 1st, 2023.
I just want to say thank you to the clerk's office that did all the work on this, and thank you to my colleagues who supported moving forward with this during the last budget initiative. I talked to some folks who sit on our BCCs, and they, although they appreciated the volunteer appreciation work that was given once a year, this, I think, will go leaps and bounds into showing our appreciation throughout the year. So I'll call for the vote unless there's any other debate.
I see nobody in queue for debate, so the question has been called. All in favor? Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Sarsfield, for your work on that. And we will move forward with bringing that policy forward to Council. Moving now to our new 6.3, a submission from Mr. Westerson and Ms. Thompson on review of councillor representation rotational models. Now, this is what Councillor Middleton Hope brought forward as the precinct model, but they have renamed it because they like ours, representation rotational model. There is no formal motion yet created on this, Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope, or at least that I don't have. So we will start with questions, discussion, etc., but we will at some point have to draft a motion. So are there any questions? And they can be questions for Mr. Westerson on the development of this model and the information he's brought forward, or questions for Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope on potential motions. And my cue box is just lighting up with Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Yes, and thank you for the work that's been done on it. I think it's fulsome. It provides some interesting observations. I disagree with a couple of comments regarding the precinct model being defined very narrowly. It actually is much more broad in terms of its application, which does include political areas. I'm not tied to the precinct model. I've said that from the very beginning. But I think a review of councillor representation rotational model is a mouthful. So I'm wondering if there is some thought given to making that a little bit simpler in terms of how we can wrap around it and speak about it. Councillor representation rotational models.
Okay.
Anybody want to weigh in on that?
I don't know if anybody wants. Call the words.
Rotating word system.
And actually, precinct and ward are interchangeable, so.
All right, so let's continue on with this. So the question is, so this has been referred to us by council to have a discussion about previous or possible models that could be brought forward. They have asked us to look into it. The report has been created by administration to give us some background. We can see that this is not something that you normally would see without people being elected into wards and then serving in wards. There's a reminder about the MGA reminding us that regardless of how we get elected or whether we have models such as this, that we must serve all of the community at one time and keep our decisions for the overall. So all of that is in there. Councillor Carlson, do you have a question or a comment at this point?
I do, Madam Chair. Just some thoughts, actually. Because I had, over the weekend, I had a chat with some folks who actually supported, voted to support a ward system. They put their name forward through the process to be part, and they were, so we had quite a fulsome chat about the process we've undertaken. And through that, I was reminded, I believe it was Councillor Dodick, who reminded me of, I think it was the Red Deer, that they voted, yes, we would like to go, and then they presented them with the actual facts and numbers and costs. It wasn't Red Deer, or it wasn't you?
No, what happened was, Red Deer was given the facts in advance and the costs and what it meant. And then they put the question on, and the vote was 73 against award system and 27 in favor.
So they didn't actually change their minds. They were just presented with the actual, and this is what I'm wondering. In my discussions with these individuals about the award system, because throughout the discussion, they were like, well, we didn't know that. Oh, we didn't know that. Oh, never thought of that. I'm wondering if there's some way to craft a question with information going forward so that it is a question we ask. Either that or because I'm not when I ran in 2007, I ran wanting to implement a award system. Then I did a lot of the research and changed my tune once I discovered the truth, the reality behind it, rather than just, as I've said time and time again, if someone asks me, do I want a pony? Yes, I do want a pony, but I don't realize how much it costs and how much work it is. And so I'm wondering if there's any sense, and I really appreciate that, I think it was Deputy Mayor and Councillor Parker, or sorry, Acting Mayor Parker, who spent some time developing this precinct model that is kind of interesting. It would be a Made in Lethbridge solution. But I'm just wondering if we shouldn't just go back to the public or spend a couple years trying to educate the public with facts and figures and real information, and then ask them again. Those are just my thoughts before we try something halfway through a term or right at the end of a term. I'm not sure where it would happen. If we actually just take a sober second thought, because again, the question I asked these folks that I was chatting with was what is appealing to you about a award system? And nobody had a good answer. They just said, oh, we just like it. And I'm like, well, why? What are you trying? And so I still want to tackle the question is, what issues do you have with our current system and how can we fix that? Because I don't think the award system is going to be the magic pill they're thinking it is. But that's just my thoughts.
Were any of your thoughts about the actual motion? No. Okay. So getting us back onto what we're discussing. So we have this report in front of us, and we have to decide, do we draft a motion of it, recommending something out of it? Do we say we like the status quo and we recommend that council stay as is? Are we recommending more review, et cetera? Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I would be in favor of drafting a motion to bring forward to the whole of council for discussion the work that's been done by the city clerk's office in regards to working through this, in my view, has taken what council has provided in terms of direction to a logical conclusion, which is, here's a model. If you're looking for a model, here's a model. This is how we see that it could possibly work. So I would be in favor of drafting a motion on behalf of this committee that would go back to council of the whole for further discussion.
So you're not recommending that we recommend this. You're recommending that we take it as a presentation and then have a motion come out of that meeting? Is that what I'm hearing?
Don't get me confused. I'm simply suggesting that, because you asked in regards to developing a motion. There is no motion currently.
No, there
so
isn't.
I would agree with drafting a motion. The motion would, I presume, if passed, go back to City Council. City Council would then receive this. So we receive it for information, it goes back to City Council. City Council would then have the discussions as to whether or not this is a model that we want to implement as it stands or with conditions.
But are we recommending that when it goes to them that they accept it, or are we recommending it just as information and then recommend that a motion be drafted based on the conversations at council? That's what I'm, like, how much detail do you want on there?
I'm prepared to do a motion that just kills it here.
And I'm the opposite.
Often are.
But I think there are certainly enough members of council and having many discussions with them that want to have a discussion around this. So,
Okay, so procedurally.
however we facilitate that,
Procedurally, this is your motion.
Yes.
And if you have a different motion, we have to see if this one passes before yours would come forward. So again, I go back to the question of, your motion can be, take this for information to them and have a presentation or a submission to them, and then the motion would be drafted following that. Or do you want a motion that we take this for information to them and recommend that it be adopted as the model?
I prefer the latter, but I suspect the former is more palatable to my colleagues. So I think we should probably go with
However
the
you want to
former.
make the decision, which motion do you want to go with?
We'll go with the former.
Okay. So, Mr. Westerson, do we need a few minutes just to draft something like that up?
Yeah, I think we'd need just a few quick moments, but something along the lines of receive it as information and forward it to City Council for the next meeting, July 11th.
And again, is it going as a submission or a presentation? And if it's going as a presentation, are you recommending you make the presentation, or are you asking administration to make the presentation?
Well, let's take personalities out of it, because I have a vested interest in this. So let's put it back on the responsibility of those that have drafted this report. So put it back on the city clerk.
So the recommendation is to bring this and as a presentation or a submission?
Presentation.
Okay, so the motion would be to, I know, again, it's a draft one, we will see if it's manageable by administration in a moment. But the motion that is being suggested is to bring this as information and a presentation to the next council meeting on July 11th, and then to, at that point, form a recommendation out of there by council.
I'm fine with that. That doesn't preclude that the city clerk's office may be apoplectic over this and decide that the timeline is too tight for them.
That will be the first question we will ask. One, is this theoretically doable? And two, is this something that can it be made into a presentation within that time limit?
So my questions are, what are you looking for in a presentation that's not already in the submission that we have?
Candidly, I think it's adequate. I'm not looking in terms of convincing me.
Okay.
I'm looking in terms of convincing others of the merits of the proposal. And
Trying to be political with it, and that's probably not where they want to come from. So can it be a submission and everything else you've said work?
well, Jeff is saying yes, so I would have to say no. Okay, yes. Simply because I have a suspicion that he's trying to corner it into a particular area that will work towards defeating the
Now,
motion.
keep in mind.
Yeah, oh, no.
Keep in mind, you're on the Agenda Review Committee.
Yes.
And if you convince your other two colleagues on that to make it a presentation, what he says would be moot.
And both happen to be co-sponsors, so. All right, so where are we at?
You're
Submission?
at making it a submission for the next city council meeting with no recommendation being brought forward from this body, and leaving the recommendation on whether to proceed or not from council, is what I am summarizing from what you've said as a motion.
Yeah, and I'm just seeing through the synapses of that logic, and I
Well, I'm
agree.
just trying to be
No,
logical.
I agree with that. I agree with that approach.
Okay, so before we can debate it, Mr. Westerson, do you have something that you need a few minutes to draft what we just sort of mumbled through?
Staff are indicating they need this moment, so give us
Okay.
2 moments.
And then we will discuss that one, see where it
Wow.
goes.
It took 3 people to come up with that?
Okay, as we are drafting that, we kind of jumped,
That's it.
we jumped from questions to debate, but we missed the part about asking the community if they have any comments on this. So,
Okay.
as the staff is drafting that, Mr. Graham, are you wishing to speak on this? I would. You have 5 minutes. Even though I just gave your name, you have to officially give it for the city clerk's department. And then, yes. You can raise that. Oh, no, it's even better than that.
Oh, there's a
Da-da-da.
And we're going to fix the
button
technology.
that's set up.
Okay, so Mr. Graham, 5 minutes to have your say in this matter.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Stephen Graham, and I applied to be on the ward study committee, and I did not have conversations with Councillor Carlson on the weekend. That wasn't me. I did receive a polite letter inviting me to consider other possibilities to help city be a better city. And I was slightly disappointed by that, in that I think while I appreciate that council has a great role to play in deciding the direction that the city goes, I think in actually involving the community in making these decisions makes for a better community. The question that was put to the ward committee was to determine whether it was a good thing to do and what the costs and implications were, and if it were to be implemented, how it would be implemented. And then that would come back, obviously, to council for things. It was also about building voter engagement, which is something that got left by the wayside when council reverted its decision. I think that it would be, in the referral of this and on the reading of the report that you're proposing to refer back to council, that most of the nays of that report, I think, will probably outweigh the yays of that particular report. And I think council will find itself going back to that ward committee, which is probably fortunate that you haven't actually written a bylaw to strike down the committee yet. So I think I appreciate that governance is the place where this conversation needs to start, but I think it really needs to come back to the community so that we can all understand really well what it is that we're asking for and what it is that we can reasonably expect to get from either a rotational model or ward or precinct model or whatever, that sort of thing, or whether we actually go with wards, or whether we continue down the path that we are currently on. Any of those things could be the right way to go, but we need to really understand as a community which direction we should be going. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Dodick.
Well, I'm just in debate.
Okay, debate, no questions? All right, do we have the motion ready? It is now up. Receive the review as information and forward the information to the City Council meeting of July 2023 as a submission. Now, if it goes to council meeting, the public doesn't have any opportunity to speak at council meetings unless council makes a decision at that point. So just keep that in mind based on what we've heard. You're good with this? With how it's written? Okay. Councillor Dodick, I think you have a debate on the motion.
No, I appreciate the work that's been done on this, but I'm consistent. I was against the implementation of a ward system, and the reasons I gave for that were quite intensive. There was but basically, it boiled down to that there wasn't enough information given to the public when the question was put on the ballot, and the example given was, as it was alluded to, Red Deer, where information was provided, a city of a similar size, and the vote was 27% in favor, 73% against. And the reasons, I assume, were part of that because they had all sorts of strange things that people didn't know about. That, for example, the candidate could live outside of the ward, but the elector had to vote in the ward system, and that was just one example. It required bylaws. It required bylaws, as does this rotational model, it turns out. So there's a cost associated with it. So even though I appreciate that this is just as a submission to go to council to deal with this, I thought it would be fair to say that likely this will end up in, well, it will end up at council irrespective of whether this is defeated or not defeated, and will be debated then. But I just wanted to make it very clear that I will be voting against this submission. I am, and will be voting against the rotational model as well. And bearing in mind that the elected officials have to deal with the city as a whole. And I remember there was a study done somewhere, I can't remember, that most issues, something were in the order of 90%, deal with the city as a whole, as opposed to specific locale. So, sorry, Deputy Mayor John Milton Hope, I'm not supporting this, but I expect you will have the numbers.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Councillor Dodick. Much of what you said applies to me, except I'll go the opposite route and support sending this to council so we can have the debate there. If we had any authority as a committee, I would be voting in the opposite way today, but I'd rather this go to our colleagues for fulsome debate and discussion.
I will be voting against this because I think we've missed the boat entirely. What the community is telling us is it's not the model, it's the conversation they want to have. They want to be part of these things and going, we are the voters, we get one election every 4 years, but we want to become part of the conversation about how do we interact with you and how do we choose you and what are the issues that are, why do we get so little voter turnout? And I think we've missed the boat entirely. It's not the product, they want the process. And we keep jumping to, we know the answer and we're going to just tell you the answer, when they're like, we don't even know the questions, and they want the conversation. So as long as we keep jumping to the product, as I said, I think we're on the wrong boat or the wrong track or wherever, and we're not actually listening to the community when they say, we voted for the ward system to have the conversation. We didn't say we wanted a ward system. We said, talk to us, include us, involve us. And for that reason, I can't vote for this. He was. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. And we seem to be doing a lot of traveling by boats and rails in your conversation.
Well, with people dying out in the ocean, I thought I'd go on the trains.
Just to Councillor Dodick's comment in regards to costs, I don't know that that was specified that there's going to be a significant cost associated with this. So I don't want to mischaracterize what you said, but we don't know what the cost stipulated in the development of any model is going to be.
Cost was with reference to the ward
I
system.
think technically he's debating, so you can't argue in his debate.
Yeah, well, actually, that's what debating is all about.
Not in the way we debate.
I think that let's go. If we go back, and this is part of my debate, if we go back to the origins of this discussion, where we talked about a ward system, I am in favor of a ward system. Having been involved in a ward system, having voted in a ward system, I am familiar with the quirks and the advantages, the disadvantages of a ward system, and I am in favor of it. However, having discussions with my colleagues over the course of the last 2 years vis-a-vis how we can provide for enhanced representation to our community, this created the genesis of the precinct model that Mayor Higgin, Acting Mayor Parker, and myself had discussions on in terms of developing the quote-unquote borough precinct area ward model that we came up with. Put out whatever moniker you want on it. It's a compromise. And what I was hoping is that we would be able to move through this to get council to agree that the focus of this is to provide for enhanced community involvement and enhanced representation. We seem to be at an ongoing stalemate, and so we've now got another motion before us which offers us the opportunity to bring this back to our colleagues for a more fulsome discussion. I don't like the idea, Madam Chair, that the public would not have any input into that, because I think, as you do, I think the public not only has a right, but it has an obligation to be involved in such a process. So, having said that, I think if it goes back to council, then I would hope that we would afford the opportunity, as I believe we are able to members of the public to provide some input between now and then or at that occasion. And that's it for my
Call
debate.
the question?
I would be glad to call the question, Madam Chair.
Question's been called. All in favor? And opposed? That goes down in defeat. Oh, sorry, that is not approved. Actually, it goes forward as non-recommended to council. No. Are there, still goes to council. Are there any motions arising? Councillor Dodick, you were talking about having a motion that you were considering? Okay. All right. We will live to discuss this another day. Going on now to 6.4, City Council Standing Policy Committee and the governance structure. So this is our third conversation around this. We had a report from Mr. Sarsfield on this, and we have brought forward, based on our past discussion, possible options for this.
Are we talking, is this 6.5?
No, this is 6.3, which is now 6.4. And so, based on our discussion at the last meeting, which Councillor Dodick, you were not at, we sort of came up with a straw idea that we're bringing back. And the City Clerk's Department was kind enough to create, under that straw idea, proposed revised SPC structure, a draft council and calendar for us to look at. So that's where we are today, is looking at those. Did they capture our conversation a month ago? Do we still like those? Are those still what we are suggesting? Or do we have changes, et cetera, we wish to make? So you will notice what we have done to bring everybody up to speed. We have kept the audit committee as a separate with 4 councillors only. We are recommending under this model, again for complete discussion, that safety and social and cultural be combined into one. We are recommending that advocacy disappear and go under the governance, so not disappear, don't think the job is gone, but become under the governance SPC so that it just becomes a regular agenda item on that SPC and gets reviewed regularly. This is coming, the civic work still remains, though it has been renamed Assets and Infrastructure, but it is essentially still civic works, and then economic and finance with 9 members of council. So you'll see that if it's tangible, physical, basically if it's under engineering, if it's those documents or those items, it would be under assets and infrastructure. Economic and finance, basically if it has monetary, if somebody is asking for money, grants, procurement, et cetera, it's under economic and finance. If it is what we call the internal intangibles, advocacy, communications, intergovernmental, master plans, et cetera, it would be under governance. Anything to do with the animal control community, cultural, emergency and protective services, and social issues are under safety and social, and then audit retains itself. We did divide out, most policy reviews would be under governance, but as per the model we currently have, if it is about financial services models, which technically are administrative policies, it would stay on, those policies would stay under audit. So in a nutshell, that is where our conversations at the last meeting have brought us to. One thing we have done is look to look more at the delegated authority. We're recommending up to $75,000 under economic, which is full council. And just to speed up the process, that economic would be able to, as it's all members of council, have a delegated authority to spend up to $75,000 on items. Anything above that would have to go for a sober review by the same group of people a week or 2 later. And then you will see that there is the draft meeting. Recommended is to keep everything on SPCs on Thursdays, which would leave audit to have the occasional Wednesdays. I think there's only like 4 a year. And to have agenda review committee moving from Monday to Tuesdays. And so every other Tuesday, there's an agenda review, and every other Tuesday be a council meeting. And this process, because one of the things when people ask, what are we trying to solve? Right now, while the committees might be working for council, it does put a lot of work onto administration. This means that they have Mondays to prepare for agenda review and for council meetings, Wednesdays to prepare for any of the SPCs, and Friday would be there if there are special meetings or anything that have to be council are called but are generally open. So in a nutshell, I know you've all read it, but just where we are, do we like this? Do we have suggested changes? Or do we just want to stay with the status quo because that's something we do after we've done a lot of work?
You got one vote.
All right, Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope with your first question.
Thank you for that elucid explanation of the process that we've gone through. I do, and I saw my colleague raise his hand. I reflect on some of the meetings that we have been to in the interim where they are lasting 6 hours in length. And my concern has been from the beginning, by stacking up these committees with additional responsibilities. When you're here, you're here. And I'm very cautious when I see groups that are tasked with leadership roles and decision-making responsibilities where they get overtaxed, and there is a propensity, not just a tendency, but a propensity for those groups to rush decisions, and I don't want to see that. So I am very cognizant of this, the change from 7 committees to, or 7 standing policy committees to 5. I have concerns with that. However, in the spirit of collaboration, I am prepared to see that we would, I'm prepared to see to go to 5 committees from 7. However, my biggest concern, and please, Madam Chair, correct me if I'm wrong.
I will.
I figured you might. My biggest concern is in regards to the Advocacy Advisory Committee. We cannot, in my view, obfuscate our responsibility to that committee. It is arguably the most important committee, the most important work that we do. And I don't think that we can cancel that because we simply have not met enough. I have had discussions with both the mayor and with the city manager in regards to actually ramping up advocacy. I see that as an opportunity now, since we have new ministers that have been appointed, and we should be going back to the table, looking at the letters that we've identified and sent to these ministers, and ramping this up and going and making meetings with them. This is a primary responsibility of council. So I can go with the 7 to 5, not the Advocacy Advisory Committee. We need that one. Please don't cancel my favorite committee.
Then you're not actually recommending going to the 5. You're recommending 6.
I would recommend 6 if advocacy is one of the 2 that has been dropped.
Okay. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, because at the last meeting, we shared the same struggles. Yes, I agree. Advocacy is very near the top of the most important things we do. I would say economic is the most important in my mind because I'm cheap and Scottish. But I guess my thoughts are slightly different. We have advocacy, and right now it's sort of been an ad hoc function because the chair of it is, or the membership of it changes every 6 months, which means it was problematic. When I saw it being subsumed into governance, it ensures, in my mind, and I'll ask my colleagues if they see it the same way, that every month there will be an advocacy committee meeting because it will be one of our standing items on this, or the new, whatever it's called. Is it still governance?
Still governance.
Okay. Thank you, without my glasses. And so it heartened me that we were going to actually elevate it to something that will meet, not at the call of Agenda Review Committee, who are busy with other things. So I kind of see it as this being subsumed into governance. It will get a higher profile, in my mind, but I may be wrong.
Now, again, just because I like throwing out options, it can go under governance, and I agree that if it's on the standing. If it does go separate, I would recommend, if it is of the importance that we all believe it is, that it become like economic and have not all 9 of us on it. Because right now, it's being done in a way that doesn't seem comprehensive. So it either has to go, in my mind, that direction, or stay under governance, because the current model of advocacy is not, in my opinion, a very effective way of doing it, because you're right, it hasn't been meeting, and for quite a few things, and it's just, we are not doing it as well as it needs to be done, in my opinion. So that is just another option I want to throw out. All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. I agree with you, Councillor Crowson. We do need to make this a higher priority and make sure that perhaps all 9 of us are sitting on this. Mr. City Manager, I seem to remember a conversation that I had with Mr. Hillier on our one-on-one where he said that there was some work being done on this the advocacy committee coming up based on previous council meetings or based on a previous SPC where we were going to start ensuring that we were inviting community groups to be presenting. Am I correct in recalling that?
You're absolutely correct, Councillor. Originally, advocacy was supposed to be tomorrow, and I know we've rescheduled that to next week
Thursday.
sometime. And yeah, that will, those groups will come in. We'll also have the advocacy plan. So this, to speak to some of the comments and questions, this was formalizing the advocacy structure a little more. It's not the significant magnitude of having all of 9 there, but it's more formalized than it was previously with putting it in at governance. So it's kind of a middle-of-the-road approach. And then the plan that will go with that builds that formal structure to have a more focused and concentrated effort on this.
So with that in mind, and taking what Councillor Carlson said, Councillor Middleton Hope, and yourself, Councillor Croson, even though I'm not on this committee and can't make recommendations, my recommendation would be that we not yet combine advocacy with governance, because I think we have to give advocacy a real chance, and we have not yet done that, and we do have a plan coming forward. We have a plan coming forward that would enable us to do that.
Councillor Dodick.
I support the resolution as is.
All right. I've got all the questions.
Because it's good.
I have all the questions from committee so far that were in the queue. Mr. Graham, do you have any concerns on this one? You sure? Everybody has opinions on this one. All right. Well, this is your opportunity to express them if you wish to. All right. So we have, now, so let's go through it step by step and see where we're in agreement so we can draft something if they want. Audit SPC staying by itself? Audit SPC staying by itself? The other option, Mr. Brierly suggested earlier on that audit could go under governance. At some point, that was a suggestion. Last time we decided to keep it on its own. Again, I'm just trying to get clarity on a motion going forward. Are we okay with audit staying on its own?
Okay, if not, where?
Well, that's the thing. Mr. Brierly suggested governance. It could go under economic. I'm fine with it on its own. Last time we did make the change from a meeting every month, which was half of the, 3/4 were canceled, to quarterly meetings. So I think we've already dealt with audit in my mind. I just want to be sure we're all sure, like, section by section.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I would be inclined to envelop it into economic and create a window for advocacy.
For audit, I'm talking.
So I said, take audit and put it into economic, which would create a window for advocacy.
Ah,
Okay.
I don't see consensus on that one. That's a nice try. Now, safety and social are recommending combining. And as I said, I really have trouble judging this. I attend these meetings, but I'm not a committee member. So those who are committee members, I know the last safety or social meeting, you had quite a long agenda. But overall, is this feasible? Some of these get canceled. Is this feasible based on your concerns? Councillor Carlson.
I think it's feasible. It was a long community and social meeting last. That was the anomaly. They're traditionally not that involved, but I think right now they're all going a bit long because we're in June trying to get schedules cleared for July and August. So I think that's one of the issues. One of the things that I see the benefit of this is these two committees should have worked well together, because I think many of the presentations were happening at both of them. There was a safety or community safety issue, so it would go to community safety, but it was being funded through the social funding pot, so they would go to social and community, and so it was duplication. So I think they should work more hand in glove, and so I think, having attended them both and worked on them both, I think they work well together, but that's me.
Okay.
No,
No, we haven't got there yet. Safety and social, combining those. Okay,
community and social and community and safety were being
recommended, yeah.
melded.
They
And,
did-
and they did deal with very much similar issues.
Similar issues, and those were the two, especially community safety, that had the most cancellations of the meetings. All right. Counselor Schmidt-Rempel?
Being that I sit on both of those as well, I'm not sure that I'd say hand in glove, but I'd definitely go with hand in hand. That the two do very much work together, and there were often questions that I would have as the chair of safety, why a particular item was coming to safety and not going to social. And it was that the item could be interchangeable between the two, and that happened quite a bit while I was reviewing agendas. So I do believe that those two, they do fit well together.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Middleton Holm?
Yeah, I think there's certainly enough work there, and I think you're actually compounding it by putting the two together. I'm not opposed to moving the two together, and certainly on a monthly basis. I think you're going to get enough work to run these. And again, being sensitive to the amount of time that is expended on each one of these, I don't think it'll be too onerous. So yes, I can live with this.
Okay. Then we move to governance. Looking what's under there, we'll discuss advocacy separately, but everything from advocacy, it stays much as it is. But again, if advocacy goes, probably intergovernmental relations might go as well. But master plans, performance indicators, policies, all council policies would be under this to be reviewed once per term, has service levels, strategic plans, et cetera. So basically, the internal workings of the organization is under governance. Everybody's okay with that? Okay. Then let's jump to assets and infrastructure. It's basically what Civic Works is doing. And so anything that would be basically under Mr. Sanchez's department, and I'm assuming now also parks would parks still be under cultural and social? Or is that an infrastructure? That's the only question I have.
It depends on the item, honestly, Councillor.
Yeah, so that's the only one that still has some other issues, but basically this is Mr. Sanchez's department and maybe parks if it's a real infrastructure question. We okay with that one?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know how, Mr. Brierley, we would facilitate that, but all under one umbrella would seem to make sense.
Yeah, as Madam Chair mentioned, it's largely the same as what Civic Works is. It's just a new name, quite frankly, is what it is.
Just to confuse everybody. Yeah. So then we go back to the conversation. Well, just to confirm, everybody's okay with those four, having four counselors still? Okay. So then advocacy becomes the topic of conversation. There are a couple of ways we can continue. We can leave it as we have it in this one under governance. We can create a separate one for it, creating another SPC, and either 4 members of council or 9 members of council. Or we can, and again, I'm just blue sky here, put it under economic, finance, and advocacy, so it only meets where economic is under the calendar right now, but it's all of council. 3 options for conversation. Not recommending any, just wanting to give some options. I leave it as it is with the mandate as it is, because again.
No, I was asking about audit.
Oh, you.
What happened to audit?
Oh, audit is going to be left as it is.
Quarterly.
And quarterly, yeah. We cut back the number of meetings, same number.
Yeah.
Which works beautiful. What works nicely now is with those 4 that have 4 counselors each, everybody gets 2 of them. All right? If we make advocacy under governance or advocacy under economic, then how we divide things up works. If we make advocacy its own with 9 members of council, it doesn't affect how we divide people up. So those sort of are, that's the one piece we haven't yet come to a consensus on. Is advocacy too large to go under economic? Question for discussion. Does advocacy need all 9 of us to be effective if it's as important as people think? Is it better served by staying under governance because then it's on there for discussion? No recommendations. What do people think?
In answer to your questions in order?
Oh,
no,
Councillor Dodick is actually
yes,
first
no,
before
yes.
either of you. Councillor Dodick.
I just reiterate, what I said a long
What we
time
have.
ago. Governance, or sorry, advocacy within governance makes sense to me.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope?
Thank you. I tend to confer with my colleague from the deep south of Lethbridge, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, in regards to allowing this to continue, given that we really have limited time, I believe, and this was my thought to the very beginning of all of this, these machinations around changing committees and so forth. I'm not sure that we have sufficient machinations. I'm not sure that we have sufficient time and data to suggest that this should be moved altogether, eliminated, put under another umbrella. So I would certainly be in favor of retaining it as it is. I don't like the fact that it has the mayor, the deputy mayor, and the acting mayor. It's a rotation basis. I don't like any of the committees that do that, largely because I think they become ineffective. And as a representative that's been on those committees, I just don't feel you get enough information, enough soak time, and enough involvement. So I would be more inclined to say, let's leave advocacy as it is currently. Let's see where we are in another 6 months or a year. And at the end of that, if we can have some analysis to determine whether it is effective or not, then we may need to move it.
Are you recommending we keep it as is or keep it separate but change the makeup of the members?
Change the mayhem of the members. I like that.
Makeup.
Oh, the makeup. I think you said mayhem, which seemed to work just as well. Yes and yes. I think keeping it independent and managing the makeup is satisfactory for the time being. We can always come back and revisit it at a later date.
Okay, Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like putting it under governance, but it has to be a standing item. So that is my one demand or want, is that it be a standing item on governance. Putting it under economic, I'm not saying we have this issue this term on council, but it does change term by term, and we may have it since it's been canceled so often. Last term, we had half of council that hated advocacy, did not want to do advocacy, refused to even talk advocacy. So having all 9 there would be a waste of time if there's that component. And if it's under governance, we can get a targeted group who are interested in it, and going to Deputy Mayor's comment, some longevity to them. So it's not you just start down a road into something and then your rotation and you're out and somebody else is in. So I would like to keep it more formalized under governance as presented.
Both just argued for what you argued for last time. You did, keeping it under governance and keeping it separate. Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Again, since I can't make recommendations, my recommendation would be to keep it separate at this time until we understand what it's going to look like with the new structure that we have administration looking at. And I would certainly encourage, because advocacy should be all of our work sitting around this horseshoe. This is an opportunity for us to get informed and understand what this city needs as it's brought to us by administration, as it's brought to us by separate outside groups. We are going to start inviting those community members and those community groups to come here and speak to us and help us understand what those issues are. So I would like to see it remain separate at this time, with all 9 members of council attending, until or after about 6 months, we reevaluate and see how we want to move forward with it. At that time, we may decide to absorb it under governance and make it a regular standing item, but until we understand what it's going to look like with the revisions that we're making, I think we need to keep it separate, with all 9 of us coming on board to understand exactly what's going on with it.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope, are you continuing
Yeah, to
the
belabor.
argument?
Yeah. When we take our lead on advocacy, which I think is important, we take our lead from not only the community, but also from the government. the government of the province of Alberta. And the 4 key issues that the last election was fought on, which they are going to be funding, are healthcare, infrastructure, education, public safety. Those are the issues that they're funding. Those are the areas of advocacy that we need to be looking at. So I think it is important for us to reflect on that and keep that laser focused in terms of the importance of advocacy. And I think enveloping it into another area may not provide us with the strength and the insights that I think we're going to need to move this forward.
Okay, so I've got 3 different ideas for them, Councillor Dodick. Which one do you like? Because it's obviously your vote will be the one that counts it.
Thought I said it's the one that advocacy is subsumed into governance. That hasn't changed.
All right. So what I'm hearing is we're recommending that it stay under governance based on the votes that we likely will get. The motion hasn't officially been made. And are we still okay with agenda review moving to Tuesdays? That's the only other question I haven't asked you guys. Tuesdays. Yes, but you will be eventually. Okay. So that, again, based on what we're bringing forward, we still give the Mondays and Wednesdays to administration to get work done, still keeping to the Tuesdays and Thursdays, recommending as is, basically. Basically, we're recommending what we have brought forward as the, what staff has brought forward.
Question, if I can,
You can.
Madam Chair and Deputy Mayor. Moving ARC to Tuesdays,
Yes.
what was the rationale behind that? Was it just what you said to give admin Monday?
To administration, it does give them Monday, and they can still, it'll be moved into the morning, and they'll still have everything up by Tuesday afternoon, so you still have the week. And the other difficulty was that Mondays are often the holidays, so they're having to remove it anyways to the Tuesday. So it's almost like, why don't we just make it Tuesday, because it's often ending up on Tuesday.
I've got, you were on agenda review already, or it's at the very end?
He's got one more,
But you started, oh, you were at the beginning, you're on currently, you've been on twice. Is Tuesday an issue?
No.
Okay, not an issue for me, it's.
Okay.
Load up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm good with that.
All right, based on everything I'm hearing, trying to think about what the motion will be coming forward. Basically, the motion coming forward is what administration has put together and what we had in front of us, which, you know, if we'd listened to Councillor Dodick, we could have saved ourselves half an hour and just gone with it. And here's the difficulty. The motion is to be made by Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
I'll second it.
So here's the motion. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council, 1, direct administration to prepare the following amendments to Bylaw 6250, Procedure Bylaw, for first reading at the September 19, 2023 meeting of City Council, to ensure amendments are adopted and effect for the 31st October 2023 organizational meeting. A, reflect the proposed Standing Policy Committee structure as provided in Attachment 1, and B, delete the meeting time reference for the Agenda Review Committee in Section 99 of the Procedure Bylaw, 1:30 p.m. on, and replace with the time and as per we have. 2, disband the existing Advocacy Advisory Committee and rescind the corresponding terms of reference effective October 31st, 2023. And 3, forward the 2024 calendar of Council and Standing Policy Committee meetings as provided in Attachment 2 to the October 31st, 2023 organizational meeting of City Council for adoption by Council as per Section 18C of Bylaw 6250 Procedure Bylaw. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. So an amendment to the motion, eliminate point 2 altogether, because I'm not in favor of disbanding the Advocacy Advisory Committee.
Now, keep in mind, this would be effective October 31st, so you have till then to prove it works.
Don't care. I'd rather have that removed altogether because I can't support that portion of the motion.
Okay,
And it's my motion, so
it is.
it's hard for me to support it.
So if it's removed, one of you can bring it as a motion arising and bring it back in if you want. I'm just suggesting procedure.
I was going to say,
not
I'd
gonna
like
do
to
that.
make propose an amendment
Well,
to add number 2 back in.
Seriously?
I don't want advocacy. Advocacy committee on its own has been failing miserably. I think this will resuscitate it and really be helpful. So that's my,
Cessa Annie that you're looking at is to move it under governance.
And keeping in mind, all members of council can come and hang out with us and have part of the conversation. And keep in mind, this is only a recommendation to council, and they can change it there if they have the votes.
Westerson, can you point out where we see that? Because I don't see that as a part of the motion.
Recommend that city council, it's the very first line. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that city council. So this will be going to the next meeting on July 11th.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the Advocacy Advisory Committee. So all we're doing is, with this motion, is we're disbanding it.
That's,
Note, reflect the proposed Standing Policy Committee structures as provided in Attachment 1, which now has it listed under governance, under that one. So that is 1A.
attachment 1 in the agenda there, Councillor.
If I can add, please,
Of course, Ms. Hilford.
it would be added into the procedure bylaw. It's currently not in the procedure bylaw. It's a terms of reference. So we would be disbanding that terms of reference, but placing the new mandate in the procedure bylaw as per the structure here.
But yeah, number 2 doesn't actually say that it's going under governance. It's saying it's
Okay,
becoming
so-
a true standing policy committee.
All right, so let's, before we vote on this thing, let's get to where we're going to be. If I have number 2 removed, you're going to ask to have it put back in. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to accept a friendly. Then you're going to defeat this motion. Then we're going to have another motion that ultimately is going to get us to where you want to be.
No, actually, regardless of what his machinations might be, what Ms. Hilford is saying is that advocacy was never established as a standing policy committee like the other ones were.
Right.
And the other ones are actually in the procedure bylaw. Advocacy only has a terms of reference. It should be in the procedure bylaw. So number 2 is regardless of where we might put it, whether it stands alone or not, however we change it, we still have to get rid of that terms of reference and put it in the procedure bylaw. So number 2 is actually notwithstanding any of the other changes, has to happen by procedure and by proper parliamentary procedure. So it's nothing.
Concerned because the cat over on the other side of the table there is a little sly.
I'm getting it from
I
the
want to make
experts.
sure that it's in there.
I'm getting it from these guys. That is, in number 2 has nothing to do with whether it's placed under governance or not. It would have to be done even if it's a standalone.
All right. Then
And you're good with the motion as is?
I can live with the motion as is. And if we need any further debate, is there any further debate?
I see nobody in the queue,
All
so you
right.
can call the
Well,
question.
then, let's go ahead and call the question, Madam Chair.
Question's been called. All in favor? That goes forward unanimously as a recommendation to council. All right. Now, you're going to love this one, Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope, because the next one is you, because it was never recommended to move to admin. It was only recommended to come here. So we have no, Is it 6.5? Yes. So we have no, yes, we have no report from administration on this. It is merely for conversation here. So we can do anything from make a decision based on our own conversation, or we can send it for a report to administration at this point, or we can, whatever the conversation goes to. So that's why there's no report attached to this one. It is just the excerpt from the minutes, because we didn't realize at council that we had just sent it to governance for discussion. We did not actually ask administration for a report to come to governance for conversation.
Yeah, so if we are looking at how we would craft a motion on this, I would like to see a motion that provides some direction to administration to review this. I think this is an important topic. What we've asked for here is, or the discussions that we've had are in regards to term limits of council members and representation on boards, committees, and commissions. It further goes on to talk about receipt of compensation and honoraria. I think it's important for us to review this. I think it would be advantageous to have administration conduct a review independently of council and provide us with some insights at a not too future date.
Not to future dates, means we won't be, it would be September at
That'd be
the
this year.
earliest.
That'd be this year.
Yeah, but September at the earliest, because we're on hold. for July and August. So are you suggesting September, October, November, December, if you want it this year?
Well, I think that to a degree, I want it this year, and I think that to a degree, it would be dependent on their capacity. So if they're telling us September is doable, fine. If they say October, November, I think we can live with that.
So are you
My
just,
preference would be October, simply because if we move this discussion forward, then we have, as the beginning of November, we have our appointments, and that would seem to coincide.
so the end date would have to be to have it ready for the organizational meeting, and that would have to back up to the October meeting at the latest, so we can make a decision. So Ms. Hilford, that's where the motion is probably going to come, the original motion, is to refer this to administration for a report to have back by no later than the October governance meeting. Again, this is just to have something on the floor. Councillor Dodick?
I think that was the referral motion that Councillor Carlson made, and I'm assuming that you were going to refer to that, Ms. Hilford, because it says that it's referred to us, and then that to invite committee chairs for input with the report back by October 31, 2023.
Yes, but that would mean that we are guiding it. We're not getting any information from administration. So do we need, do we need information from administration in addition to talking to our fellow chairs? Or do we just want to talk to the chairs and just make the decision at our level only without?
I think there may be some legal implication on term limits. I'm not sure.
And so that means the city solicitor probably at least should have a look at it, which is why referring it to administration as well as discussing it at our level may be more advantageous than just discussing it at our level and not having the information we actually need to make the decision.
Yeah, there are we can see that there are legislative stipulations on some of the boards, clearly, that would need to be included.
Yeah, this is the actual motion, it's just from the minutes. There's no report.
So we're looking then, Madam Chair, to refer this back to administration for an examination and a return with a report by first council meeting of October,
First governance meeting,
first governance meeting of.
right? Governance, and then governance would have to report it to council, is what I'm assuming. Now, again, is that doable? So first thing is, we'll look at the logistics, if it's doable, and if this is something administration believes is, is there information to be found? Secondly, then there's also the determination, we've already decided by consensus that we need this information to make a decision. So let's start then with a question to the city manager or designate. One, is there information that could be included in a report that is necessary? And two, is governance meeting October doable?
Thank you for the question. So previously in the agenda, there was a motion arising for clerks to do review of the boards, committees, commissions. I mean, we could roll this into that review so it's holistic. I know that wouldn't meet with the timeframes. As well, number 3 probably would take some time. It has to do with the code of conduct bylaw and the council remuneration policy. We could see if we could bring it back for October, but I just can't guarantee it.
Okay, so Councillor Middleton Hope, you've got it in mind to have it done for this year. If it was ready with the BCC review, which are, again, can be done separately or together for 2024, is that something you'd consider? Is it, in the drafting of a motion that you would have to draft, right?
Correct. Well, given the pressures on administration, we don't want to unduly burden them with additional angst. So I can live with a protracted period to make this decision. What I simply want us to do is get it right. So if that means it's going to take a little longer, rather than expeditiously.
I don't think we have to make the motion that it's tied into the other one, or do we have to? Do we want to tie it in, or do we want to leave it to you're doing both of them? If it makes more sense to tie it together or to do them separate, you may not know at this point until you get into it, or would you know at this point?
Don't know at this point, thank you. We will try and bring it back as quick as we can, but again, we'd want to consult with legal and anybody else, and if there is issues, it may take more time, but we will try and bring it back as quick as we can, so it doesn't have to be tied to the other.
That does include speaking with the chairs of the various committees?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, well, that was in the original minutes, that we would talk to the chairs. Again, it doesn't, I mean, having volunteers do the work and then telling them that we have a better idea and haven't talked to them, they don't like that.
Hard cheese.
All right. Now, is that as clear as mud, Mr. Westerson, about what? Is the motion, do you have questions about what we're trying to draft?
What I've got at this point in time is the governance SPC is going to refer this item back to administration, thank you, for an examination review and provide a report back at the October 26, 2023 meeting of the Governance Standing Policy Committee.
Actually, I think we've decided that since it's going to be, could be linked to the other one, we're giving it to 2024.
Okay.
Well, it can be up to 2024, but Ms. Hilford said she'd try to get it faster. Right? I mean, so we know it would come back sometime in the next 15 months. And I don't, oh, Councillor Carlson, you're in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a thought on this. As one of the chairs of one of the committees that is listed here, I did actually take it upon myself to have some discussions because we just had a strategic planning retreat. So we had most of our board there, and I had some discussions around this. So one of the questions I would ask is are we just going to invite the chairs to comment? Or do we have some specific questions that we should ask them? And I haven't contemplated what those could be, but I'm just wondering, does that make sense, or do you,
We're wondering if we should give direction to administration going, not just do this review, but ask these questions. This is some of the concerns we have, and the concerns could be like term limits, and the stipends might be separate, and that's what you're thinking? Would you need that directive directions, Ms. Hilford, or?
Wouldn't, but whatever council would want us to ask, we can.
And sorry, Ms. Hilford, the only reason I raised this is because if this was sent to me as a board chair, and I'd said, council's looking at this, I would glance through it. What do you think? I would glance through it and say, I will have to take this to my board. What do you want us to comment on? And there'd be some back and forth. Yeah, because
I agree. The
I
more
know that our comment
information-
from this would be, keep it the way it is. Status quo is working. Why change it? But there may be, as I said, to sort of let the curtain fall a bit. We opened the conversation. I said one of the challenges I think I see, and this is just speaking on me, is sometimes our outside BCCs, and I'll use Green Acres as an, is at odds with our provincial government. And as the chair, it puts me in a tough spot to be not as always polite to our provincial government as I would normally be as a councillor. And so I said one of the challenges, maybe the chair of the organization should not be a member of council, because then they can be as political as they want. And they all went, oh, that kind of, it makes a lot of, so there were some good thought processes that went on, but I don't know what those questions would be to ask of them to think about.
I agree, Councillor Carlson. The more information you can give the stakeholders, the better. I mean, what problem are you trying to solve? What issues do need to be looked at? That would be helpful.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope, you were coming in and out.
Well, I was,
Because this is your motion. Do you have ideas of what you're wanting to solve that could help draft some of these questions?
Well, I think you know what problem we're trying to solve here.
Want their money.
What's
Oh,
that?
sorry.
I think it is important to set term limits on some of these boards, committees, and commissions. I think it is important for members of council to sit on a number of boards, committees, and commissions. With the way in which it is currently structured, there are boards that I might want to sit on that I could not sit on because we've had members on that board for a lengthy period of time. Now, the reverse of that is lots of experience, understand the lay of the land very well, but how am I going to understand the challenges of an organization like Green Acres if I don't get onto it? Yes, I can always attend, I understand that, but as we all know, you don't get a fulsome understanding for it unless you're a part of that committee. This goes in line with the issue of stipends. This also goes to the issue of people or the designated responsibilities like RLAC, for example, where you have the mayor, the deputy mayor, and or the acting mayor as a part of this. It's highly dysfunctional. I'm on there for a total of actually 4 meetings, plus all the strategic planning meetings, but normally I would only be on there for 4 meetings. What contributions can I actually make in 4 meetings? So those are the areas that I have concern about in terms of adequate and effective representation. So if we look at questions that could go back to the various chairs of the committees and a series of standardized questions that say, okay, so what do you want to see from council? And there are other organizations in the city that want representation from council. We heard that this morning from another group. They want representation from council. We do not have representation on this group currently. So this would provide us with some insights into how do we expend our energies more effectively. That's where I'm headed with this discussion.
So what you want to ask them is, A, is the council representation that you have right now adequate, like as the number of councillors, et cetera?
Okay.
Is it serving what you want? And that would be whether or not council should be on there. And then with term limitations, based on the succession planning that you see for your board, would you see term limits for council as effective or not? Now, from our perspective, you're looking at is, gives us all perspective on different boards, make sure that we all understand how the boards work. But the question for the committee would be then, right, like, is it effective for you if, you get a council member for 3 years? Should they be staggered? That sort of question would be what you'd be asking them, because what works for us may not work for them, or it might work both. So are those the 2 main questions? Do you have sufficient committee coverage from council? Is it effective? And would term limitations work in your succession planning?
Points would be important. The third then is the consideration of stipends. And I think that is a consideration that must be included in that.
So now we're talking not the honorariums that we are providing to volunteers. You are talking about
The honorariums / stipends. Yeah,
paid to counselors for sitting on boards.
right.
Okay.
In addition to salaries.
So what question would you want to ask the BCCs? One, I assume Ms. Hilford's team already knows who pays and who doesn't, right? I mean, do you have that information, or do you have to ask them?
Who?
No.
Oh,
Know
there's
who that
more.
is. So we want to make sure in whatever report we know who pays and how much. But do you also want to know why they do it? Like, what's their reason for giving it? Is that part of what you want to know?
Adequate, is it adequate and effective? Are they,
Okay.
does it make sense to them? Does it make sense to our council?
Is it just a holdover and they just do it because they've always done it? Or is there a reason that committee sees for why it's done?
Right.
Okay.
And then the disparity between a couple of committees and the rest, because the rest don't.
Okay.
So why don't you would be a question that you might want to ask another one of the BCCs.
And then it depends on whether it's one of our own BCCs or if it's set up by somebody else, right? It gets into,
Right.
Yeah. And I think that also needs to be part of the report. I know you do that, but being very clear on if a chair comes back to you, is it from a committee that we create, like that's ours, or an outside committee that we just sit on, right? Because I think you're getting different responses from them, but that's just my, supposition. Does that cover any questions you want to ask of them? So that's included in the report.
From my perspective, I think it does. What about administration?
That covers it. It does tell us which BCCs in number 1 and number 2 are in scope.
Councillor Carlson, you brought that concern forward. Does that cover what you were thinking about having directions to ask?
I think that'll be helpful, because as I said, if it came to me, I would be like, it's fine the way it is, stop here. But if there's some specific questions, it may engender some good discussion.
Well, and I know myself, if you don't have specific questions, that's usually the thing I throw in the garbage, because I'm like, well, they're just asking if I'm okay, and I can quickly say yes and get on to other stuff.
Exactly,
Yeah. All right. So let's go to the motion that Mr. Westerson has drafted for this. First, we'll make sure works for you, Councillor Middleton Hope, and then we can debate it. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee refer this item to administration for an examination and review and provide a report back to the Governance Standing Policy Committee in 2024. Okay. Any debate from anybody else on that? Question?
No, I'm kidding.
Okay. We'll assume the question has been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. We will ignore the man to my left. All right. That gets us through all the submissions that we had. We do have one motion coming out of our confidential item earlier in the day. And so I have a motion from Councillor Dodick. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council amend City Council Policy CC-17, City Manager Performance Review, under the City Council Responsibilities section, item C, by inserting the word may prior to the word utilize, and further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to the performance evaluations remain confidential pursuant to sections 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Dodick.
Yes, thank you. I'd really appreciate if I get a unanimous vote on this. Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? You got it unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you to all the administration who contributed to this meeting.
Madam Chair.
And we are out of here.